Hi everyone, my name is Josh Lipka. This is my presentation on critical theory as an educational research method. So for critical theory, there's kind of just three main tenets to it, and that is critical theory is founded upon a collection of theories that are focused on taking a critical view of society and human interactions. We'll explore that a little further in some slides down the road, but it's really just focused on the societal view and how to be critical with your thought processes and your beliefs and those kind of things. Next up, the next pillar is that the theory aims to identify and examine the ways in which modes of knowledge are created and used. So again, that's how are perceptions created, how are we looking through society in a certain lens, maybe with some biases, and just thinking about that processes. And finally, critical theory has an early start with the work of the Frankfurt School. So that is a group of German philosophers that I will go over in the history of, so we'll get there in a little second. So first up, again, with the key tenets is the collection of theories. Critical theory primarily takes its base from the works of Marx and Freud through the examples of the Marxist theory of the ideology of illusion. And the individual misinterpretations analyzed in Freud's The Future of an Illusion. This example is largely through the middle-class Venetian girl's delusion that a prince will come and marry her. And then with this lens of critical theory, the woman in this example, if she had the processes of the critical theory, she would think beyond the delusion of a prince coming to marry her because she's middle class, and she would become self-aware as to why the marriage is a very unlikely possibility. Additionally, she'd probably be able to identify the biases that led her to wanting to believe the delusion that would come true. So again, it's a very self-aware, critical thinking focused ideology and philosophy really in this sense. And Raymond Guest interestingly described the theory as a self-conscious, self-critical, and non-objectifying. So again, it's very objective truth. What is happening in the world? What can we dig past our biases to get to? Next up, our second tenet, again, examining knowledge. So critical theory frequently takes the appearance of this fun German word, Ideologiekritik, which is the critique of ideology. The aim here is to examine and try to explain why people within societies follow opinions and perspectives to consent to systems or accept certain institutions that don't really represent their objective, their truthful interests. The purpose, again, of this philosophy is to identify power structures for what they are through critical thought, and to expose the faults that are often overlooked when they simply look at them as powerful institutions or belief systems, but rather just powerful structures. So again, thinking deeper about the government or the media conglomerate that produces the newspaper, thinking deeper about that stuff. So these Marxist-based theories, such as this one, do not predict the inevitability of cognitive decision-making, but rather distinguishes what ought to be done rather than a strictly logical standpoint. The differentiation between scientific and critical theories is essential. It is the foundation to the dialectic of enlightenment that was written by Max Horkheimer and Theodor Adorno, and focuses on the social forces that could hamper human advancement and freedom and possibly restrict the rights of individuals back to the days of enlightenment. So that's a connection to the title there. But again, very much focused on the critical thought of people and how we get there. So now, diving from that tenet into the history of critical theory, we have the Frankfurt School. So with the Frankfurt School, these key theorists are Theodor Adorno, Max Horkheimer, Herbert Marcuse, Axel Honneth, and Jürgen Habermas. And the Frankfurt School wasn't a university per se. It was at Frankfurt University, but this was a distinct ideology or philosophy, again, within this set of founders, largely with Max Horkheimer. It was a Marxist-based school of thought, as I said, by a German group of philosophers who were focused on critical theory. So again, really evaluating that idea. And as you can see with the beginning of that timeline there, was in 1919, the fall or the efforts of World War I, and again, if you see the middle of the timeline there, it develops before World War II. So there's a lot of societal changes there, and what they were going for was intelligence emancipation, which is really just freedom, right? Like we might hear about the Emancipation Act, but again, if you think about like deep, if you use the critical theory mindset and you think back to that time with the context of Hitler and the rise and the reaction of Germans from the Treaty of Versailles, this was critical thinking, right? Like they were thinking beyond that, and where like Nazism and like the rise of Nazis and Hitler, his ascension, it began because people wanted that emancipation. They wanted the release from the Treaty of Versailles. So during this time period, a lot of intellectuals fled Germany because they saw what was happening with Hitler, and we'll get in what happened with Horkheimer. But generally, the critical theory developed by the Frankfurt School can be expressed as a social theory that aims to stimulate individuals to grow their personal perspectives beyond societal judgments. This new society would analyze deeper than what is simply on the surface and grow their awareness of what they hold biases towards beyond just the accepted values within ideologies. So again, that key one there with this time frame in Germany is like the hatred towards the anti-Semitism towards Jewish people and Nazism, and just blaming someone on that, and not really critically thinking about it to understand that it's not the problem. So now we have Max Horkheimer. Again, context is key here, so that's why I put it in here. He was born to a Jewish family in Germany in 1895. He began his academic career in the discipline of psychology, but transitioned to philosophy in the early 1920s. Horkheimer rose to prominence and became a founding member of the Frankfurt School in the early 1920s. I think I had it down as 1918. That was when a thesis was first presented in this group of individuals, and who would later become the professor of social philosophy and the director of the University of Frankfurt in 1931. So again, in that 10-year period, dramatic growth. However, after Hitler became the Chancellor of Germany in 1933, the Gestapo shut down the University of Frankfurt in 1934, and Horkheimer fled to Genova, Switzerland, before he later fled again to New York in 1941, when World War II really cooked up. Horkheimer broadly defined critical theory as a human activity that takes society as its object and attempts to just transcend the tension between individual spontaneity and the work process relationships on which society is based. So again, going beyond just like clashing of opinions and realizing what's going on a little deeper, like between biases, opinions, and just how people are raised, right? Like how do you get to those points? So next up, the strengths and weaknesses of critical theory. Critical theory is always critical of the circumstances in which thoughts are considered. Again, the critical, self-aware notion of this. So the strengths, as our society continues to evolve with societal facts, the philosophy of critical theory encourages deeper thoughts and consideration of why individuals think a certain way, as well as why they hold certain beliefs within ideologies. You can think of probably a couple examples where people are just self-absorbed, or not self-absorbed, but just absorbed in ideology, right? Like they don't see a different way. It could be anti-vaxxers, Trumpists, or again, on the other side, like it doesn't pick political sides. It's just the way people are just absolute thought towards things and not critically thinking about their biases and the backgrounds to them. Excuse me. So the fundamentals within this theory provide a framework that challenges inequalities in the world throughout a diverse range of topics, again, such as racism, sexism, justice, the disabled, democracy, and amongst an array of others as well. The weaknesses to this theory, often a risk with critical theory, is that the objective or the instrumental basis of this theory is always focused on the power structures at play, and objectively it will not consider the context of situations. So again, this theory, it's easy for us sometimes to be like logically or think backwards and be like, well, logically, why did you make that decision? And we forget that we're humans and that we have human error. So this theory is fixated on the rationale of logic and can forget the human nature that finds its way into our society. It can get stuck on the materialistic needs that individuals believe they need within a consumer society, so it gets stuck on that, and it can struggle with going beyond the central tenets of just objective realities, right? Like, someone might want a pair of shoes, and if they don't need it, critical theory might suggest that, hey, you don't need it, save your money. Where the person, again, they're human, maybe they just want those new Jordans, or there's new pair of Ultra Boosts. They just want the next thing, right? That's consumerism in our society. And the critical thought would be, maybe you don't need it. And that's where this theory is. Finally, we have areas of practical application. So again, the goal of critical theory is to build a freer and more gratifying society, which is objectively or theoretically possible, and then demonstrating these ideas into a society that is convicted to the emancipation and equality for all. Again, emancipation just means freedom, equality, like equity, right? Like I said before, the Emancipation Act. So going from there, the fundamentals of critical theory have led to the inception of a diverse array of different societal theories that are passionately directed towards enacting social justice in the area of their focus. So these examples and comparisons can be found in such theories as feminism, critical race theory, culture theory, gender and queer theory, and again, a lot of array of other individual theories that are, again, focused on critically thinking about things and going from there. Additionally, these theories, these examples have expanded into our society with perspectives such as the Bechdel test for female characters in media. When two females on camera are talking about something other than men, that passes the Bechdel test. Thinking about who funds media companies, again, who funds Fox, who funds CNN, who funds the CBC for different messages. Again, what could their underlying promotion be? Why do the rich get richer and the poor get poorer? Again, are you critically thinking past just, numbers on a screen, or are you thinking about what's actually going on there and who's controlling who gets richer and who gets poorer? The role of consumerism in our society, I kind of talked about that earlier with the shoes. And again, a host of other examples that occur due to people's underlying belief systems or disillusions about the various ideologies, right? Like, people can get stuck in there. So again, the critical theory, this whole overview, the wrap-up applications, it's very important. Again, if we're in the scheme of educational research, it's crucial that as researchers we're identifying where is this source coming from, what is possibly a researcher's background in this, what is our background in this. If we're doing our own educational research, where are we connected to this? We've read it in our textbook with examples such as, like, when we're looking at, if we're doing research within a school, what are your connections to the teachers, how are they giving their answers, and such things like that. So critical theory, very important to that vein of thought. Yeah, I think it's very crucial, and it's a very important thing to consider within our course. So thank you for tuning in for my presentation. I'll just flip to the last page here to check out the references. Yeah, have a great day. Thanks for tuning in.